All right, so in the previous lesson, we have learned how to consume context with the UseContext hook. Now, in this lesson, we're going to learn yet one of the other advantages of the UseContext hook. Okay, so one of the cool things about this UseContext hook is that we can use it as many times as we want inside a component. For example, we can consume as many different contexts as we want inside this navbar component using the UseContext hook. So now we are consuming two different contexts inside the navbar component. We have the auth context and the theme context. So what I'm going to do is change these contexts to the UseContext hook. And then what that'll do is turn this into a functional component, because currently this is a class-based component. So what I'm going to do here is remove these consumer tags, and we're going to consume these contexts via the UseContext hook. All right, so to do that, first of all, let's import UseContext. And then we need to turn this into a functional component. So now I'm going to keep this component here for reference, but then come down here and create a functional component. So I'm going to say const and call this navbar again. And then inside this component, we want to return some JSX. So I'm going to grab all of this stuff in here. Let's cut and paste it over here. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do is consume the context inside this functional component. So we have basically learned how to use the UseContext hook. Let's come down in here, and I'm going to say UseContext. And first of all, we want the theme context. And remember that we are destructuring some of these properties from this, and the things that we want are these things here. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it over here. Now we're saying const and destructuring is dark theme, and light theme properties from theme context. This theme context returns to us this object, and we're grabbing those properties from theme context. Now we can do the same thing for the other context, the auth context. So I'm going to grab these because that's what we want from the auth context. So let's copy these is logged in and change auth status properties and set it equal to UseContext. And we can use this as many times as we want inside a component to consume different contexts. Now, this time, we're going to want the auth context, like so. Okay, so now we're consuming these two contexts. Now what we want to do is this thing right here where we check which theme we're actually going to be using. So let's copy and paste it down here, like so. Okay, so that's it. It's exactly the same thing with this one. And we're still outputting information from these theme context and auth context. We're getting all the information we need from these contexts and then determining which theme to apply. And I think that looks much nicer than all of this where we had these different consumer tags. So perhaps it may look a little confusing after a while, I think, when you have several different contexts. I mean, I just wanted you to get the bare mechanics of it. So that means that we can get rid of all of this class component now. We don't need any of that anymore. All right, so let's save all that and preview it in the browser. So let's toggle the theme. That's good. And we'll toggle the auth status. Okay. All right, so you see that nothing has changed. Everything still works as it did before. But we really couldn't see any change because we still have all the same functionality. In fact, if we saw any change, that would mean that we made a mistake somewhere, right? We converted that class component into a functional component, and it uses the UseContext hook instead of the consumer tag. So what do you think about all that? It's a great way to work with context in a functional component, right? So that is how to use multiple contexts inside functional components. And I think it makes it a whole lot easier to read, and it makes the components appear neater as well. Anyway, that's how I prefer doing it. So why don't we go ahead and take a short break here, and we'll come back in the next lesson. See you in the next lesson.